Bonjour, welcome to Wahsa Distance Education Center's radio Zoom classes. This is SVN3E, grade 11 workplace science, and I'm the teacher Bronwyn Slade. If you'd like to participate live today, you can call the Wahsa studio at 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017. You can listen on the radio at 91.9 FM and on the television at Bell Express View channel 972. You're always welcome to join me live through the Zoom link, whether you want to ask me questions or just watch and listen, that's totally fine, which is available from me, your teacher, and also your DEC. Our classes are scheduled from Monday through Thursday from 3 till 4 in the afternoon, and we are in our 8th week of our 9-week course. So we are very close to wrapping up our course and the term and the year overall. So it's really important that you're getting your work in. It is due by June 10th. That's the last day to submit work. Also remember that there will be a culminating assignment. So once you've submitted all of your coursework, you still have a final project to do that you do not have yet. So it's really important to get your work in so you can get that final project and get that completed as well, as that's worth 30% of your overall mark. So it's a big chunk. So anyway, a reminder of what the key questions are. These are what you submit for marking. They're listed all at the end of each of your IL lessons. So you need to do all of them. Some are check your understanding questions throughout the chapter. Some are the activities at the end of the chapters, and the rest are the review questions at the end of the chapters. So make sure you're looking at the end of each IL lesson to figure out which ones you need to do. Then you need to show all your work to make sure that you are completely answering the question with full sentences. So I truly understand what it is that you're intending, and make sure that you're actually answering the question and not just talking about the topic. You can do this by hand or electronically, either is fine. Feel free to write in the workbook if that works best for you. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. They're small spaces, so I don't know if that's the best idea, but you do you. If you want to do it electronically, you can do that as well. Word and Google Docs are the best files for me to open. They're what we have access to. Everyone has access to Google Docs through their NNEC email address. So you can do that. If you're going to use a different file type, I'm sure it's fine. Just touch base with me first, so to make sure that I can actually open your files. So there are 3 ways to submit your work for marking. The first is to scan your work and send it electronically. So if you've done it by hand, you can scan it using a smart device. So either an iPhone, there's the Notes app, or the Android Google Drive app. Both have scan functions that are fairly straightforward. You can then send it to me through email to studentwork@nnec.on.ca and CC it to bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca, or you can also send it to me through Facebook Messenger at bslatewahsa. The second method is to drop it off into Lookout. We have an outdoor mailbox at 74 Front Street. We're the bright red building next to the post office, and we have a small white mailbox next to our side entrance. So you can just put it there at any time. We are continuing to be closed to the public, so you can't come in to drop it off, so just put it in the mailbox. The third method is to hand your work into your DEC. So your DEC can either send your work through the Express or fax it to 807-737-1732, or toll-free fax to 1-800-463-7852. If you'd like to connect with me through social media, both my Facebook and YouTube are under the name bslatewahsa. So you can friend me on Facebook and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you'd like, and then you'll get notifications every time I upload one of our lessons. All of our radio Zoom classes are recorded, and I post them on YouTube under a playlist called SVN3E. Also, there is a supplementary video list as well that has all of the videos that we've watched in class linked there, so that you can find them all from the original sources if you'd like. Science is a really visual subject. I try to connect as many visuals as I can so that you can really get the full picture of what we're talking about. So setting yourself up for the most success is to watch the videos. Again, you can join me through Zoom. Even if you don't want to ask questions, you just want to watch, totally fine. You can watch on YouTube. If you can't do either of those options, then let me know and I can send you a copy of the recordings so you can watch them then. So if you have any questions, want to talk to me about anything, want to set yourself up for success for completing this term, please email me at bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca. You can also Facebook me at bslate-wahsa. Call me at the office at 807-737-1488, extension 2209, or toll free at 1-800-667-3703. Again, a reminder that June 10th, not this Friday, but next Friday, June 10th is the last day that you can submit work. If you'd like to get your credit this year, submit your work in by June 10th. The sooner the better, but June 10th is the last day that you can get work in. I think it's really important to position myself within the context of our course and as education. As I have white settler ancestry, I have white privilege, which has set me up for success within our education system because our system is built on white supremacy and therefore is set up for success for white people to succeed and other people not to. This has given me privilege and means that the way that I understand education is different than the way that many other people understand education. I do work hard to disrupt this cycle and look outside of my experience in order to understand the experiences of others that I don't truly understand, or never can understand, but can accommodate as much of that as possible. So I do work for that within this course. I live in Northwestern Ontario on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe people, and I work to learn from those around me and honor the knowledge keepers in this culture and community. And when I can, integrate that into our course. This is my first time teaching this course, so I have lots to learn and unlearn. I have had many glitches, and there are still many things as we come to the end of the course that I can do to improve. If you have any suggestions for me, please feel free to reach out and let me know how I can do better. Also, our textbook is very Eurocentric. It's very centered on the white experience. It uses some problematic language, and it definitely ignores Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis knowledges and experiences, and this is very concerning. In order to supplement this, as I can't change the workbook yet, considering working on that to change our resources, but as I can't do that yet, I work to integrate Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis knowledges and experiences within our course material in my classes as much as I can. Again, this is not an area that I'm an expert in any size, shape, or form. So if you have suggestions of things that I could do better, again, please reach out and let me know. All right, so we are now on Unit 7, our last unit of our course, and this is using natural resources with sustainable practices. So just to give us a little bit of an understanding, you may have heard of the right to free speech, most likely, something that's often argued, but have you heard of the right to water? So organizations like the United Nations argue that access to clean water should be a human right protected in international law. The United Nations has estimated that each person on Earth needs 20 to 50 liters of water a day to meet their basic needs. Yet over 1.1 billion people lack access to adequate supply of water. Earth's water is under threat from human-made pollution and large corporations that buy up water reserves for profit. Right to water activists argue that countries with abundant freshwater resources should share their water, not sell it. We are one place where we have abundant water sources, and even people within Canada, within our own boundaries, do not have access to adequate, clean water. This is problematic. This is not okay. All right, so lesson 21 is what we're doing today, which is we're looking at Canada's natural resources. So at the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify and describe several natural resources in Canada. You will understand which are renewable and which are non-renewable and why. So you know you've met these learning goals because you can explain the economic benefits of both renewable and non-renewable natural resources, and you can think critically about sustainable use of natural resources. So first, let's look at what renewable natural resources are in Canada. So a resource can be only called renewable if it is being replaced by natural processes faster than it is being consumed. This is super key. It has to be able to be replicated, reproduced, recovered naturally without any interference by humans. It needs to be doing that faster than we are consuming it or we are extracting it. So that's super, super important. So first, let's look at Canadian fisheries. So Canada's coastline is 29,000 kilometers long, and it has lakes and rivers that contain more than half the world's fresh water. Remember, I was just saying about fresh water? We have more than half the world's fresh water in our boundaries. We are incredibly lucky and something to consider. Two of Earth's richest fishery grounds are also located off Canada's east coast, leading to Canada being in the top 20 international fish exporters. In addition to catching fish from oceans, rivers, and lakes, Canadians operate over 640 aquaculture businesses or fish farms, raising salmon, trout, mussels, and oysters. So here are 3 images that show us the top types of where we get our most of our money, our economy, how it thrives in commercial fishing. This is from 2018, so 4 years old, not super old, probably still fairly relevant. So on the west coast of Canada, so primarily BC, the Pacific salmon, crab, and hake, I don't know about hake, I don't know how to say that, are the top 3 commercially fished species. So you can see that they make a value of $91,000 is how, no, 91,000. So that's, see this, they have them in thousands of dollars, which is really weird to say. So that's $91 million in Pacific salmon that we sell a year. Primarily, we sell it to the US, the United Kingdom, Japan, and other countries. Crab, we sell primarily to China. Is 92% of our crab goes to China. And then, so I was surprised that 37% of our hake goes to the Ukraine. I didn't realize that. So that is on the west coast. Then we have freshwater fisheries, so from in Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and the Northwest Territories. We have yellow pickerel, whitefish, and rock bass are the top 3 from there. They are significantly less, and we make a significant less amount of money for these fish. But then looking at the East Coast fisheries, where we have lobster, snow crab, and shrimp, and the lobster, which is our highest amount. All these 3 are higher than, these are the highest. So it's East Coast, then West Coast, then freshwater, is where we make our money. And the amount that we catch is, so $1,419,651,000 is how much we get in lobster a year, our economy, and primarily that is going to the US. So that's a lot. It's a big income. It's a big part of our economy, is fishing, commercial fishing. So in addition to having a large commercial fishery, Canada has recreational and Indigenous fisheries. So recreational fisheries across Canada catch trout, walleye, bass, salmon, shellfish, and others to eat. And then some Indigenous peoples have been fishing the waters in Canada for thousands of years. They have expert knowledge of local fish and how to fish sustainably. The fish of Canada have an important role in complicated aquatic ecosystems. In order to be healthy, these ecosystems require the presence of Canada's great variety of fish species. So we need to make sure, and if we don't want to change these ecosystems, if we don't want to hurt them, we need to make sure we are not overfishing and changing the dynamics within these ecosystems. So then wildlife. So from black bears to beetles, deer to damselflies, peregrine falcons to pondweeds, Canada abounds with a variety of different animals, collectively called wildlife. This wildlife attracts tourists from all over the globe who want to catch a glimpse of a polar bear in northern Manitoba, or a pronghorn antelope in Saskatchewan, a moose in British Columbia, or perhaps a herd of dull sheep in the Yukon. Wild animals and plants also provide food for many Canadians who hunt, trap, and gather them. So healthy wildlife populations provide many goods and services that some Canadians take for granted. Others, such as some Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis peoples, rely on wildlife to eat and know it needs to be sustainably managed. So we're going to watch a video, and hopefully it's just going to work for me, that talks a little bit about Indigenous traditions in the boreal forest. Come on, work, please. The Canadian boreal forest is the largest intact forest and wetlands ecosystem remaining on Earth. I'm not going to read it all. There's just a few things I need to read at the beginning. This is the story of someone who calls it home.
When I'm out in the bush, I like the quietness, the sounds of nature, and the beauty, and knowing that we're free. At a young age, I learned my hunting skills by observing elders. It's healthy to be out there mentally, physically, and the food you harvest from the land is all natural.
People of the boreal.
My name is James Marlowe. I was born and raised in Klutzike, Northwest Territories. I'm a member of the Klutzike Dene First Nation. Right now we're at the cabin which I built for my kids and my spouse to live in and to practice traditional activities in part of our culture. And we're at Duhamel Lake, a small lake, and the lake contains a lot of wildlife such as moose, ducks, geese, beavers, muskrats, musk oxen, and also fish. This area I know like top of my hand. I am self-supporting, doing my own stuff, such as taking out people, hunting, fishing, showing them our way of life, so that they have an idea how the land looks, how fresh and natural it is. And at times I create weekend events for our young people where the youth can go and the elders can teach them traditional activities so that they won't lose the knowledge of how to do it. I'm teaching them how to hunt, fish, and trap, and I think it's important to keep it up so that they know how to survive out on the land. Right now we're doing a moose camp, and we want to take kids out to hunt moose and show them how to track them and prepare the meat once it's harvested. It's a lot of work. It's not as simple as going out there, shooting, and bringing meat back. And once you shoot the moose, there's a system as how to properly butcher it. I've always been taught that it's good to share. I would package up a little package of meat and go out in the community, and we give it all out. The whole community benefits. We do this as part of our tradition, and at the same time, this creates good luck for us, the hunters. It's important to me to protect the land, the water, animals, because we depend on it for our survival. Right there, if you look out the window, there's just like a grocery store. All the animals that live on our land. You go go out there and harvest them, and you have healthy food. The fresh water here is fresher than the bottled water. You can go anywhere, any lake, any river. You can take a cup and just drink it. But at the moment, there's a lot of development happening in our area. 1990s, there was a big diamond rush. Those mines are located right in the main migration route of the caribou. They made big holes in our land where the caribou is avoiding, and all the noise and all the dust from the mine. The caribou know that, so they're moving somewhere else. And now there's hardly any caribou. Hopefully that it'll go back to its normal herd someday. We want the kids to have a future that they see today. In 100 years or so, we want them to live how we live. We want to keep it that way so that they can keep their culture. And we want them to hunt, fish, and trap in the future, and also teach the skills they know and pass it on to their kids. When people come to visit us, we're hoping that they come and we teach them our way of life. We want visitors to go away knowing that there's Indigenous and First Nations people living out here in the bush, in the wilderness, that are still practicing their way of life in a clean, pristine area that has no pollution that the ancestors had provided for them. I want them to feel happy knowing that there's an area that is being protected for as long as the earth is here.
So this was just a really good reflection in terms of looking at the different ways that people approach wildlife and our natural resources. And James talked a lot about culture, a lot about tradition, a lot about teachings, carrying that knowledge forward, about these natural resources sustaining life in terms of food, but also community and connection. And not once did he talk about it being economically advantageous. So he never talked about making money off of it. He never talked about that power, that wealth wasn't ever associated. The wealth of it was the quiet, was the connection between the animals, between the community members, was the sharing of food. That was where the wealth is. That was where the value was. Whereas if you could think back to just us talking about Canadian fisheries and how we talked about how much money we make off of exporting this as a resource. So lobster, we export and we make over $1 billion a year on exporting lobster alone. And that's where one group of people put value on these natural resources in terms of being a commodity, in terms of making money, and other people put value on these natural resources as being part of their community, as being part of a life source, as being part of connection and tradition. And so that's just really an interesting way to sort of see the discrepancies or the clash between different worldviews, and how we position that. Even looking at through our textbook and how we come to learn about these things is there's always a bias, there's always a spin on it, and often, because we live in a capitalist system, often that spin is about making money and how that is the most important, how that is the best thing, and how everything should be towards that. And there are lots of harm and lots of repercussions because of that, and maybe something to be considering as a society as a whole. So I thought that video was just really interesting to wrap up looking at wildlife and just how we can value that in different ways. So now we're going to move on to forests. So much of Canada's surface is blanketed by forests, about 5.5 million square kilometers. This represents 10% of the world's forests and about 30% of the world's boreal forest. Canadians make industrial use of this resource, and Canada is now the world's largest exporter of forest products. Most of those products are sold in the United States, in Asia, and in Europe. So here you can see some statistics of us exporting lumber, softwood lumber, and you can see that how that has changed and how it's gone up and down. So in the world in general, in 2018, since 2018, we've reduced significantly in terms of how much we exported. It was going up, but now it has severely dropped. And I didn't research into why. I just put this slide on here and then didn't even really look at it and analyze it. But it's billions of dollars again that we earn from exporting lumber. So let's talk about softwood versus hardwood, as that's language that's often thrown around in the lumber industry. So Canada's forests are made up mostly of softwood trees. So these are coniferous trees, so needle trees that keep their needles over the course of the winter. Generally, they're evergreens. So pine, spruce, hemlock, cedar are all examples of coniferous. But hardwood is common in eastern Canada. These are deciduous trees, so broadleaf trees or trees that lose their leaves in the autumn and over the winter. So oak, beech, ash, maple are all examples that are in eastern Canada. The terms softwood and hardwood originally came from loggers based on how much the tree resisted the saw blade. So you can assume that a softwood tree, coniferous trees, are softer, easier to cut, and hardwood trees are harder. Deciduous trees have harder fibers and are harder to cut. But these terms are not always accurate. Not all coniferous trees are softwood, and not all deciduous trees are hardwood. So here is a map of Canada that shows a rough sort of composition of the forests across Canada. It's not exactly precise, but it gives you, and doesn't list all of the trees that we have, but it gives you a little bit of an understanding of the types of trees in Canada. So here is so we have spruce are all this green, so a lot of spruce and firs, so those are coniferous trees. And then in here we have cedars and pines, and maybe hemlock is in here. It's a little bit tricky to tell. And Douglas fir are in BC as well, in the mountains. And then we have poplars along here. This area is the prairies, right? So there's not really very many trees. And then in southern Ontario, we have lots of maples and birches. We have birches here in our area too, but we have a lot of spruce and fir, or spruce and, yeah, I guess a lot of spruce and maybe some pine. And then firs and more spruce out here, a little bit in Newfoundland. So that just shows you that we have a lot of softwood, those are coniferous trees, and then some deciduous trees in southern Ontario and Quebec, kind of, though there's some poplars too. And again, this isn't all of every single tree. This just sort of gives you a rough idea of the types of forest. Here further north, there's nothing, because that would be where the tundra is, right? So that we don't have, there are not trees up there. Okay, so cutting down trees is not the only way Canadians use forest for economic gain. Canadian tourist industry caters to visitors who want to experience wild forested lands. So here's some images that just show you the old growth. These would be like those Douglas firs in BC, these huge, they're so tall, like you can't even tell, like this is just a small, tiny portion of these trees in BC, or even just this wealth of forest in going adventuring, going on hikes is pretty wild. Untouched Canadian forests are also vital to wildlife biodiversity. Scientists have estimated that 2/3 of all species in Canada are in some way associated with forest habitats. So that's a really big portion. Forest is really, really vital to our ecosystems. right, so now let's talk about water as a resource. So Canada has an abundance of fresh water. We talked about it. It has over half the world's fresh water, both as surface water and as groundwater that make up an important natural resource for us. So almost 9% of Canada is covered by fresh water, and every year Canada's rivers discharge 7% of Earth's renewable water. Canada has about 25% of the world's wetlands, and 8.5 million Canadians get their drinking water from the Great Lakes, which also support 25% of Canadian agriculture. Along with freshwater, surface water, Canadians' aquifers are storehouses of fresh water. So aquifers are underground beds of crumbly rock or soil from which groundwater can be pumped. There is more water underground in Canada than above ground. So here is a map where you can see where some of the groundwater is and the surface water. And so we have kind of an interesting map in terms of the ratio of use. So how much water we use. This isn't how much water that is available, but where we use our water from. So we use a lot of, in the territories, in Northwest Territories and in Nunavut, over 70% of the water that is used is from surface water. So very little groundwater is used, whereas Yukon, 65% is from groundwater. A lot of places, so British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec is all 60 to 70% or more is from surface water. So groundwater we're really not tapping into. And then once we get to the Maritimes, then here we're starting to use more groundwater. This isn't ocean water, but this is groundwater, right? So 100% of the water in PEI is groundwater. They do not have any lakes and rivers that they have access to that they get their drinking or their usable water from. So that's one element of this map. The other element is for the potential annual water recharge. So where is that coming from? So from my interpretation is how deep this is and how much water is being able to refill the local and far traveled aquifers. And if is it from underwater or is it from, I'm not sure, is it going to the water or is it going to land? I'm not quite sure why these are two different colors. So that is it like the ocean places seem to be closer, seem to be more blue, and then the inland places seem to be more green. But I don't quite understand that. There wasn't a lot of information about this exactual legend. So it's important to really label things so you can really understand, interpret information. All right, so most Canadians rely on surface water for drinking water. That's what we could see. However, 26% of Canadians rely on aquifers for their drinking water and other purposes. PEI relies on aquifers for its entire water supply, right? That's what we looked at that map when it said 100%. Both surface and groundwater are used for other human activities in Canada, including water livestock, irrigating croplands, fish farming, and extracting minerals and fossil fuels. So you now can do the key questions on page 174, questions 1 and 2. So we've looked at renewable resources. Now we're looking at non-renewable resources, which should not be new to you. Currently, without Canada's oil and gas sectors, Canada's economy would shrink by more than 50%. Similarly, Canada's many deposits of minerals and metals are major sources of economic wealth. Canada's non-renewable natural resources provide many economic benefits to Canada. So we know our non-renewable resources are concerned and something we need to be careful about because they are not renewable. We cannot get them back within our lifetimes, within the next generations. Yet they are a large source of our economy. And so if we are saying that there's value in financial value, then this is concerning. So first, we're going to look at coal. So Canada has almost 4% of the world's coal resources. 97% of Canada's coal reserves are in Western Canada. Canada exports about 28 million tons of coal per year to 21 countries, which brings in about $2 billion. Slowly, the world is moving away from coal as a primary energy source. We talked about that, but this will have a dramatic effect on Canada's economy. So if we can't sell coal because people are not using coal, that's going to impact our finances. So we have oil and natural gas. So oil, natural gas, and bitumen form the foundation of Canada's natural resource economy. So bitumen is a solid or thick liquid fossil fuel. We haven't talked about too much. Oil was first discovered in Canada in 1857 in southern Ontario, but it did not become a major part of Canada's economy until after the Second World War. Today, there are over 30,000 oil and gas wells in Canada, both on land and at sea. Most of these wells are located on Crown land, which means the province nation administrators administers the land and takes profits from the wells drilled. So this is a really colonial and problematic way of looking at land ownership and wealth. So the idea of Crown land and who that belongs to, saying that that belongs to the government, is really, really is a very white supremacist perspective and way of approaching land ownership. So this ignores the treaties that the initial Canadian government made with the Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis people in Canada. It ignores them, it ignores their land rights. It ignores the traditional territories and the traditional uses of land, and says that this land belongs to the government, and therefore they can do whatever they want with it, and they can extract and get the wealth from it, which means that they ignore the rights of people who live there and the people who live in the surrounding areas or the in-between areas, like where pipelines are built and things like that. Pipelines get built through Indigenous land all of the time because of this idea of who owns the land. So your textbook formulates this idea as though Crown land, as land can be Crown land and can belong to the government. But I think this is problematic and something for us to question and to wonder why that is in place, and if is that really the best way to look at a community as a whole and for everyone to be successful and thrive. So continuing on, Canada is the 7th largest oil producer in the world and one of a few nations that is a net exporter of oil and gas, which I don't quite understand, because it means that we export more oil and gas than we import. But I don't understand why we would import oil and gas if we have so much. I don't really understand the world of exporting and imports, because I'm like, if we have so much, why wouldn't we use it first and then export our excess, opposed to exporting all of our oil and natural gas and then have to import it because we didn't have it. So I don't quite get that. But again, it's not my area of expertise. Most of our oil and natural gas is exported to the US. So then we have minerals and metals. So the mining of minerals and metals in Canada generates about $50 billion every year in exports. So a mineral is a naturally occurring solid that formed as a result of geological processes, so such as salt, diamonds, or potash. Over 100 mining communities across Canada rely on the industry to thrive. Canadians mine a variety of metals and minerals. PEI is the only province territory that doesn't mine minerals or metals. So here you can see this map shows us various mines in various places in Canada. So again, nothing in PEI. PEI is so small, but so there's nothing there. In Nova Scotia, gold and gypsum. In New Brunswick, zinc, lead, and salt. In Newfoundland, gold, nickel refining. And in Labrador, iron. So then you can see, so those are the Atlantic provinces, and then you can see that there's various different places in Quebec. So there's various different kinds. There's nickel, copper, zinc, gold, diamonds, iron, titanium, scandium, aluminum. Then in Ontario, also nickel, copper, cobalt, salt, uranium refining mine. Oh, then there's a whole bunch of like the administrative stuff that happens in Southern Ontario. Then in Northern Ontario, which many of us probably know, can be in our communities. Some of you may have direct relationships to mining. Mining having a direct impact on your communities. So gold, palladium, platinum, copper, and zinc. Then Manitoba, nickel, cobalt, and gold. and zinc. Nunavut, gold and iron. Northwest Territories, diamonds. Yukon, copper, gold, and silver. Saskatchewan, uranium and gold, potash and coal. Alberta, the oil sands, so oil and coal. And then in BC, there's lots in terms of copper, gold, aluminum, lead, and zinc. So there's quite a range. You can see there's quite a range of different places throughout the entire country. So now you can do your check your understanding questions on page 176, questions 1 and 2. So that brings us to the end of our lesson. That I feel like we got there all really quickly, but we have talked about coal and oil and natural gas a lot in terms of non-renewable sources of energy. So talking about them as a natural resource, we sort of as quickly just because we've talked about them so much already. Anyway, so first we talked about renewable natural resources in our lesson 20. So remember we talked about fisheries, wildlife, forests, and water. So these are all renewable resources, which means that as long as they can replenish themselves naturally before we deplete them. So it is possible to move some of these from renewable to non-renewable if we're not careful, if we don't do it sustainably, right? So fisheries are one example that if we kill all the fish in an area, then they can't repopulate because they can't reproduce. So same with forests, if we wipe out all the forests and then they don't have anything to grow seeds and seedlings, then they can't reproduce. So things are only renewable if we harvest them sustainably, if we extract them sustainably, which we're going to talk about more in future lessons about how we extract them and the consequences of those choices. So then we talked about non-renewable resources, which fossil fuels, which we've spent a fair amount of time with, and then a little bit of look at minerals and metals, which we haven't looked at too much before, but just how much a wide, diverse amount of minerals and metals are extracted, are mined across Canada as a whole. So hopefully at this point you can explain the economic benefits of both renewable and non-renewable natural resources. We've talked a lot about the economic benefits. And you can also think critically about sustainable use of natural resources, because we talked about a little bit about the environmental impacts of and how we think about value within these resources. And if we only think about these resources as economic, then the choices that we're going to make about them are going to be one direction, opposed to if we think about things environmentally or as a community or as overall well-being, then if we put value there, that's going to be different. So you can do the review questions on page 177, questions 1 through 8. This is a short batch of questions here. So as always, if you have any questions, please reach out and contact me. A reminder that June 10th, again, I continue to say it over and over again so that you will remember, June 10th is the last day to be able to submit work. So if you're hoping to get your credit, you need to get your work in before June 10th. And also then you have a culminating assignment to do once you are finished all of the work that you have. So you need to get it done so that you can get that in by June 10th as well. If you need to talk to me about anything, please call at 807-737-1488, extension 2209. You can also call us toll free at 1-800-667-3703 and get through to me at extension 2209. I do have access to my voicemail now, so feel free to leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. My email address is bronwyn.slate, so bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca. You can connect with me through Facebook, where my name is B Slate Wahsa. There you can message me or send me work. Also, all of our lessons are uploaded to YouTube under the account B Slate Wahsa. Remember, everything's under a playlist called SVN3E, which is our course code. And there are supplementary videos as well there for all the videos that we've watched in class, so you can watch them again if you'd like. My office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., though I teach the first hour and the last hour of my day, so that's not a great time to try to get a hold of me. Otherwise, I'm fairly available and will get back to you generally as quick as I possibly can so that we can communicate. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a lovely day and get your work in, please. All right, Gwitch.